Hello, hello. This is Pattyjo. I know I've taken a bit of a break. You can hear that I'm really kind of under the weather. So that is why I am sounding pretty bad. I'm going to try to pause or at least keep the microphone away from me if I'm about to cough or something because, gross. I did not want to delay this any further though because so much is going on with Safe Streets in Baltimore here. And sorry, water. Hopefully that'll help. Okay, so going back to even further than this, but where I started off really watching this is with the shooting that happened in Brooklyn, which is not very far away from me. It was an area that I covered as working for the fire department. I worked at that station that covered that area for a long time. And the Safe Streets idea, I didn't really dive into it too much until after that. And of course, I'm not working for the fire department right now. So just to review really quickly before we go into and I picked a news video, just to go into it really, really quickly. Safe Streets is a program that was developed by an epidemiologist in Chicago. It was called something else in Chicago, and I did a video. I probably should redo the video because I did it on my old equipment, and it's a little hard to watch. Not like this isn't going to be, but okay. And the idea of it is to use people who would interrupt violence. And the idea behind that, and the reason why an epidemiologist did the study, is that the idea is that trauma and drama and all of the violence is, how can I say this, like a disease. It's like a virus moving through the neighborhoods. So the idea is, sorry, that was my puppy. The idea is to interrupt it. So the same physician that developed it there brought it here. It went through Hopkins. It's now being run by LifeBridge Health, which is one of the hospital systems here in Baltimore. And the statistics say that violence is reduced. Mayor Scott, and I'm going to try not to be too hard on him, but he really has put his foot in it a lot of times, as far as I can see. He developed a government agency in the mayor's office called MONSE, M-O-N-S-E. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look up again what it means. I did cover that in the other video. And MONSE now oversees Safe Streets. So when the question about the shooting incident with all of those people, there was nearly 1,000 people at that block party. 30 people were affected, and 2 are unalive at this point. And they said, well, Safe Streets did intervene in a couple of incidents at that party before the large incident occurred. So then there was a lot of news stories about why isn't this transparent? Why don't we know who is working for Safe Streets? Things like that. There's been problems in the past, including 3 Safe Street workers who are unalived, who were but with gun violence, and some who have, I don't know a number, have been arrested for drugs and guns. So there have been some incidents of issues. Now, one of the ideas to remember is they're intervening in, many times, gang violence. So who is going to work for Safe Streets? You want the news, even the news, it's the news channel that I'm actually going to cite here. And they came up with a tag word. They wanted transparency. It was very much a clickbait, as far as I'm concerned, transparency. Because then Mayor Scott shot back with that doesn't add to the safety of our workers. There's the transparency is transparent enough and things like that. And he was very guarded with some of his answers, putting his foot kind of into puddles where he just didn't need to. Quite frankly, I can totally understand that. Working for the fire department or working for anything in the city, you could have looked up my name and found out what my salary was, found out a lot of information about me. That's not something I agreed. Well, I guess I agreed to it when I agreed to work for the city fire department, but it's not something that you actually think about when you're going to work for them. So recently, two very major things have happened, and we'll look at the news stories, but one of the things is that about a week ago, the FBI raided one of the 10 offices, and it is now closed. And I don't know what the basis of that was, but it was federal in nature. I think it may or may not have been gang related. And just to back that truck up into that parking place a little bit, who do we think are going to intervene in these gang-related violence issues? Some of the workers are going to be people who used to be incarcerated. Some of them may or may not have had or still have gang affiliations or gang affiliations in their families. That's what makes them credible. I certainly couldn't walk down the street as a middle-aged woman looking like I do and think I could intervene in one of these problems. I mean, wearing a fire department uniform made it a little different. People would listen, and some of the youth would listen, but not very much. So, on the one hand, to criticize who they're hiring, on the other hand, to try to hide that you're hiring people who have a background, none of this is okay. The second thing that's going on is there's a vote for a $3.6 million grant to go to Safe Streets. Now, it doesn't go directly to Safe Streets. It goes to Muncie first, which is not audited. It is not in the state auditing system, but Safe Streets is. So then Mayor Scott, who enacted Muncie, he gets kind of his fingers in the pot and decisions to be made with this $3.6 million. And a lot of people are wanting to vote just so that we get the money into the city because they need the money because they need the help. Agreed. Quite frankly, up till a few months ago, and I think probably even now, I'm not sure that my position at the fire department was filled after I was no longer able to work at. There may still be a position open after a year. Amazing to me, amazing. So let's see what the news has to say. We are going to be looking at the WBFF Fox 45 Baltimore channel news. I did look at some of the others. They aren't saying anything too different. Fox is really, really diving into this and really in the mayor's face. Not that I agree with all of their positions. Again, I think they do some things that I'm not happy with, but they have the most comprehensive amount of information in one spot. So let's take a look at it and see what they have to say.
Following breaking news, the FBI raids the Safe Streets Bel Air Edison location and the homes of 2 employees. Sources tell us federal agents are looking into possible gang affiliation.
And it comes almost exactly 2 years after our investigation into the Safe Streets program began. Tonight, we're reviewing everything we know about Safe Streets and all the questions that remain about the program.
That's right. Our team of reporters is going over it.
Again, another thing, I have not watched this. This is just the one that came up with the other ones. The other ones just had the recent news. This one said they were going back through it. I stopped and I started recording at this point. So let's
every detail and angle. Alexa Ashwell is examining the gang that could be at the center of the probe.
Jeff Abel looking into the history of criminal activity within Safe Streets, and Keith Daniels is pressing city council members for their reaction to the raid.
Our team coverage begins tonight with Mackenzie Frost and the federal investigation.
FBI agents raiding the Safe Streets location in Bel Air, Edison, as well as 2 employees' homes. Sources close to that investigation tell us that this probe is possibly connected to gang affiliation, and this wouldn't be the first time that has been an issue for Safe Streets. Thursday morning in Bel Air, Edison, the Safe Streets location getting locked up as a woman captured by Fox 45 News cameras leaving the Safe Streets site.
Was the FBI here this morning?
Have a good day.
Locking the door just hours after the FBI on site searching the locations. Sources close to the investigation telling Fox 45 News the probe related to possible Black Guerrilla family gang affiliation. The Bel Air Edison Safe Street site managed by LifeBridge Health. According to LifeBridge.
Now, the Black Guerrilla gang, I don't know a lot about them. We did do some studying on gang tattoos, a little gang history in the fire department, because it's important to know what you're looking at, who you're talking to. And I think a lot of the roots of that gang are from prison. So this very well, again, could be because they're hiring people who would be credible, a lot of times would be incarcerated. And let's not forget, Baltimore is very, very good at arresting and incarcerating their population. It's a very small city population-wise and shrinking. And the percentage of people who have records and felony records is shocking. It's shocking.
2 other employees had federal agents show up at their homes. In this statement, LifeBridge telling Fox 45 News, "We are treating this incident seriously and complying with requests from authorities." It's unclear what requests have been made. Mayor Brandon Scott and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement issuing a brief statement pledging accountability for anyone found guilty. But this
Mayor's buzzword for transparency was accountability.
This is not the first time
like
BGF
BS to me.
specifically has been linked to Safe Streets. In 2018, Ricky Evans, a former Safe Streets worker, admitting to storing guns and drugs here at the Safe Streets location that used to be located off Monument Street in East Baltimore. The feds also say Evans admitted to using the location as a BGF gang meeting site.
Sweet.
Well, Monty says the FBI raid does not and should not diminish the work that Safe Streets Baltimore staff do on a daily basis. It raises questions about the operations.
Also, how can they not know? How can they not know that these locations are being used as meeting places for these Come here, baby. It's okay. You're upset, too. You can't see her. Let me see if I can put little Harley. Come here, baby. Come here. You want to go? I know you want to go. You want to come up here? Come here. They want to see you, I bet. Upsy Daisy. Upsy Daisy. This is my beauty. This is my beauty girl. You're not happy like that, okay? All right, bye-bye. All right, so yeah, how can they, excuse me, not understand? Okay, let's go back.
We send questions to Mayor Scott and Monzi asking how many current Safe Streets employees are breaking the law. Are any other Safe Streets sites under federal investigation? Is this latest black eye for the program enough for you to call for a pause in funding for and operations of Safe Streets? Will you now release the names of the Safe Streets employees to the public?
No, he's not going to do that because there's no way. He's got to know. He's got to know
referring us
something.
back to their first statement, Mayor Scott not answering the questions directly, saying everyone should be held accountable, and he will work with the federal partners through this investigation. Despite
Everybody but the mayor's Monsi program, who's not being audited when this money comes in, and their fingers all go in it.
Fox 45 News' relentless investigation uncovering previous criminal activity from employees and pushing for transparency. Let's get a video of this. Mayor Brandon Scott defending the program time and time again.
I know what they do. I'm full support of what they do. The public should trust and know, just like they trust our police officers.
Hello? We don't trust your police officers either, Mayor. Okay? Did you forget the the gun trace task force, who now there's books about the conspiracies there. But like there was another news program, I can't remember which one I watched, that said when they took out that part of the police department, that division, and they prosecuted them, they didn't take down the whole police department. You don't throw out the whole bag of apples because a group of them are bad. And that could be, but he just admitted he knows, and he knows what they do. Well, did you know about the gang activity there? Is that what you're saying?
Lifesavers are out there doing their work.
We are transparent about the program. We will not risk the integrity of the program for anything.
They're out in the community.
There is no integrity,
apparently.
apparently.
Grow, as you heard about us announcing Safe Streets 2.0. It's about how we further that work and take it to many different places.
But that has not been reality. Fox 45 News has been asking the city for names of the Safe Streets workers, how those employees are hired, the definition of a mediation.
Okay, so the names I'm not sure I need, but a list of the qualifications might be good, and what would prevent a safety. I mean, because even though like they all knew my name and everything because that was all posted everywhere, but everybody knows that the fire department, you have to go through drug testing, you have to go through physical testing. So they knew that I passed the physical test. They knew that I passed the drug test. They knew that I passed all of these tests, certain tests, and then they have the whole academy program where I'm required to pass all of this knowledge and physical based collective information, and that's what the people know. We don't know this about Safe Streets. They're right about that. I hate that they keep using the word transparency. I think it's clickbait.
What type of training is provided and by who, along with how the work by Safe Streets employees is tracked? Those questions routinely ignored. Also never answered exactly how the nonprofits running each location spend the millions of dollars in tax money given to them by the city. Now the FBI setting its sight on Safe Streets in City Hall, seemingly standing by its flagship gun violence prevention program. We're still working to find out more information about this latest federal investigation, but the FBI tells me no other Safe Streets locations were raided. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, the Safe Streets program hires former convicts, but it's not clear how the program makes sure its employees don't continue to commit crime while they're working for Safe Streets.
They pay them millions of
Fox 45
dollars,
News
maybe.
found one example of a Safe Streets worker charged with selling drugs at his location. Charging documents include this picture. Police say he is holding a bag of drugs. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live now with a closer look at Safe Streets workers charged with crimes. Jeff?
Well, the city has now accumulated a roster full of former Safe Street workers who had vowed to fight crime, but it didn't take long before they'd committed crime. It's the arm of the city's crime fight that has long operated under a cloud of suspicion. Its books aren't audited, its members aren't identified, and its progress still in dispute.
The reality is that we don't know how many people they're talking to. We don't know that they're actually stopping any crime or stopping any beefs at all.
But what we do know is that many of the ex-cons who are hired to mediate conflicts in communities have actually made city streets less safe and at taxpayers' expense. Take Ronald Alexander, for instance, seen here wearing a Safe Street shirt and holding a bag of suspected drugs. This former staffer hit the radar when he was pulled over for a traffic stop, and officers found 100 grams of fentanyl in the console of his car. According to a federal indictment, he told officers he'd seized the drugs as part of his work with Safe Streets in order to prevent crime. Alexander is now back in prison, serving an 11-year sentence for drug distribution.
I'm not knocking all of them, but I'm saying some of the Safe Streets workers are what they call 50%ers, which means 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
And sometimes both feet have been consumed with crime. 10 years ago, the city shut down this Safe Streets office on Monument Street when guns and drugs were found stashed in the office. And in the Brooklyn office last year, a federal indictment accused Vernon Harper of possessing fentanyl with the intention of distributing it. The former Safe Streets worker was sentenced to 18 months in prison.
Brooklyn is the area where that mass shooting occurred, by the way.
But despite all the problems, the mayor has long defended safe streets.
And just like any other employee in any other industry, if we find out that folks are in that, whether they're a safe streets worker, whether they're a police officer, whether they're a rec and parks worker, we'll address that through law enforcement.
But former City Council President Lawrence Bell believes the problems are too great, the progress too little.
I believe that the time has come to kind of like phase out safe streets. Let's take the money we're putting in safe streets, that is, let's put that money into recruitment of police officers.
Well, safe streets.
Police are down something like 70 per day. I don't want to go into that because I think that makes everybody unsafe. But they do need more police officers. They didn't have enough that night of the mass shooting in Brooklyn. I don't know how those. I would like to dive in more to the statistics of safe streets. How can they say they're making it safer when the shootings and the statistics for the people who are affected by those, not just that lose their life, but that are affected, the number of shootings that occur where people don't lose their lives is 3 times what that number is, and we don't even discuss that.
Has long vowed to hire trusted members of the community to work in its staff,
Right.
but it has not described exactly what trusted members, the qualifications for that may be. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Then there's the case of Damon Scroggins' murder. Safe Streets worker Ronald Brady Jr. was accused of killing Scroggins in September of 2019. That case went to trial in 2022, but ended in a hung jury. Brady was ultimately acquitted in March. Scroggins' family is highly critical of the Safe Streets program. They call it a, quote, criminal enterprise.
My belief is that our city government is financing a criminal enterprise. I believe that with that.
How can we not kind of agree with this gentleman? Yes, he has got a really small world at this point in his life. His son was a victim of potentially, allegedly, a Safe Streets worker. We have past gang affiliation that was confirmed with arrests and people from the program in prison. The mayor saying, yeah, we know what's going on. Well, do you? Really?
In my heart.
If you know what's going on, are you
so invested in it that it's turning a blind eye to what it really is?
Fox 45 News has been asking about the Safe Streets workers for years. We want to know how the workers are trained, how they clock their hours, and how the city makes sure workers aren't involved in illegal activity while employed by Monzi or Safe Streets. We've never received a straight answer to any of those questions. The mayor's office and Monzi are ignoring them outright.
And Fox 45 News has also been pressing for answers about how Safe Streets workers handled the Brooklyn Homes mass shooting. 2 people were killed that night, 28 others hurt in the incident. Monzi says Safe Streets workers were there, conducted 5 mediations before the shooting. However, those Safe Streets workers did not tell police nor Monzi about the massive party or any potential threats. The city won't say what a mediation is, how they're recorded, or the criteria for a successful mediation. Monzi says there is a form to record mediations. We pressed the mayor on that, asking to see a blank form.
Have you seen the form that the Safe Streets workers used when they go out in the communities and talk to people, that they keep track of their mediations?
I have probably not seen them in a long time.
Can the public see a blank form?
I think the public should trust and know, just like they trust our police officers, that these lifesavers are out there doing their work.
And Fox 45 News followed up with more questions, asking what information is privileged when talking.
Sorry, had a big cough there.
Talking about the document used to record and track mediations done by Safe Streets workers. And we've also asked what the public is supposed to base their trust on. The mayor's office ignored those questions. And we're not the only ones asking questions. Some city council members are as well. Councilman Antonio Glover went so far as to say the city should withhold funding for Safe Streets until they're more transparent. Councilman Yitzi Slifer and Eric Costello have also been outspoken in their demands for transparency, prompting former Monzi director Shantae Jackson to criticize them in an op-ed in the Baltimore Sun back in July.
She spent her entire tenure in this agency running away from the media. And I'm going to continue to ask it, and if we don't receive the follow-up prior to that hearing, I'm going to repeat the very same questions that I asked last time.
Should Monzi be getting the level of funding that it is?
Right now, I think that until we start to see transparency in data, I think that money should be held to a halt.
Councilman Schleifer and Costello talked about the raid. Eric Costello posted to X, remember when the former director of Monzi, speaking of Ms. Jackson, chided us for having the audacity to ask hard questions about safe streets? Yeah, I do, end quote. Fox 45's Keith Daniels spoke with council members today. He joins us live now with more on what they're saying.
Now, this former Monzi person, Miss Jackson, I think left or right around the time of the mass shooting because, well, obviously, somebody has to take the fall, too.
Well, Kai, we reached out to all of the council members on this matter today and tonight. Comments about safe streets and those serious allegations. The latest development involving safe streets coming into focus Thursday night at City Hall, where council members are asked to respond.
As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Safe Streets.
These are city employees that their salaries are paid for with taxpayer dollars.
City lawmakers speaking out after learning about the morning FBI raid at the Safe Streets Bel Air Edison location, along with 2 employee homes. The FBI not releasing details, but sources telling Fox 45 News federal agents are looking into possible gang affiliation.
Could you imagine if that was a fire station or, oh my gosh.
At an unrelated hearing at City Hall Thursday night, we caught up with 2 council members, one who supports Safe Streets, the other with critical questions about the program, both with concerns about the FBI raid and those serious allegations.
It's not surprising at all. I mean, myself and a couple of my colleagues have been very vocal on just standard accountability and transparency, and we've gotten none of that.
Obviously, serious allegations, it would be serious allegations if anybody, had that happen to them. So, I look forward to finding out more about what happened and what the investigation holds.
But they're going to keep dumping money.
And see what comes out of it.
Fox 45 News sent questions to the entire city council asking their reaction to the FBI raid on the Safe Streets location and if they support calls for an audit on the $20 million agency. Mark Conway, chair of the council's Public Safety and Government Operations Committee, responded with a statement reading, quote, "This is concerning to see, and I am seeking additional information. We should always expect public safety agencies and those that receive city funds to carry out important public safety initiatives to follow the law."
None of this surprises us. The people who oversee it, Monsi, has a lot more questions now to answer.
But they won't.
Well, concern from council members, but despite the latest developments, no one said today that it's time to shut the agency down, at least temporarily, until critical questions can be answered. Well, live now at City Hall, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Fox 45's investigation into the Safe Streets program began 2 years ago, October 2021. At that time, we found 5 years of Safe Streets data showed inconclusive results about the program's success, even as the mayor pledged more money to it. In March of 2022, we found Safe Streets is supposed to submit monthly reports and audits with the city, but those reports didn't exist. Ooh. And 1 month later, in April, we found Safe Streets owed a community health center hundreds of thousands of dollars. Months later in June, the city administrator said it was because of an administrative delay, and the Board of Estimates was working to get caught up. In September, Mayor Brandon Scott announced the patchwork of nonprofits managing the Safe Streets program would change, putting LifeBridge Health and Catholic Charities in charge of all 10 sites in 2022. That change was made without telling City Council. City Council President Nick Mosby called that unacceptable.
When did you first learn about the change in management and oversight that the mayor announced about the Safe Streets program?
When it was reported in the media. So my team or myself was provided any prior brief.
And that might be right there the problem with not having Monty accountable to be audited, because they don't have to go to the council to ask for anything. They could just make the change. Not that that was a bad one
on the restructuring of Safe Streets and this the new approach from the mayor.
Is that problematic to you?
Extremely problematic.
Well, Fox 45 News submitted a public records request to get more information about the nonprofit contracts to run Safe Streets. The city didn't hand them over until January after we threatened legal action. Then just this month, we filed another public records request to find out more about how Safe Streets spends tax dollars. We found the program spent more than $5,000 at major shoe stores in April, $4,000 at stores like GameStop, Bath & Body Works, and Walmart. Records show the agency spent $2,500 in COVID relief money to take workers to Los Angeles. Now many city leaders are calling for an audit of Monty and Safe Streets.
I think an audit does need to be done.
Okay, Miss Sheila Dixon. Okay. You know, she's starting to sound okay to me. I have some problems with her. I guess she's paid her debt to society. She had some problems when she was the mayor. And now she's priming herself up to run again. And this is probably going to be a big ticket for her, that she's going to want to oppose some of the soft serve that the mayor keeps giving everybody and trying to shove down our throats. But I don't trust her either.
Is key. If you have people that are benefiting from tax dollars, then there should be some accountability there.
Well, through our investigation, Mackenzie Frost has visited each Safe Streets location multiple times, but she found few workers each time. At some sites, she couldn't find any employees at all. Fox 45 has also found some Safe Streets locations have changed, even though the city websites still list them in their original locations. And we tried to get answers from former Monty Director Shante Jackson about the program, but more often than not, she walked away from our questions.
Director Jackson, can I ask you a couple of questions?
I think the mayor said meet us at the next.
Are you going? You have to realize that we have a job and we have the right to ask questions and get information out.
Director Jackson, can we talk about the multi-year Safe Streets contracts?
We don't have any comment today.
I know that you announced your resignation. You're planning to leave. Can you say where you plan to go?
Let me stop right here.
Okay.
Never, ever will I prioritize any news about me over top of news about our young people.
That's why I didn't ask
we
during
can
the
save
press
that question for a time when I'm ready to share it. Thank you.
Well, now we're also looking into the gang at the center of today's raid, the BGF, or Black Guerrilla Family. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell continues our team coverage.
The Black Guerrilla Family, or BGF, has existed for more than 60 years, and here in Maryland for more than 30 years. The gang, over the decades, involved in drugs, guns, and violence. The Black Guerrilla Family back in the headlines after a source confirmed the notorious gang is possibly linked to the FBI's raid of a Safe Streets location here in Baltimore.
It wouldn't surprise me to hear that a gang that is infiltrated.
Here's another one who's not really worth anybody's trust. Okay, let me take a breath.
The prisons that has infiltrated and controlled so many neighborhoods is now infiltrating an organization like Safe Streets.
During his time with the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, former federal prosecutor Dhruv Vignarajah was involved in prosecuting cases involving members of BGF.
There were both individual prosecutions of killers as well as large-scale prosecutions of multiple members. One of the biggest prosecutions in Baltimore history was of a set involved in the Greenmount area where, dozens of members were indicted.
The birth of BGF dates back to the 1960s when the gang was founded inside a California prison. BGF appeared in the Maryland correctional system decades later in the 1990s, and while still a prison gang, expanded its criminal activity beyond prison walls and throughout Maryland. BGF making headlines over the years for drugs, guns, and violence.
BGF has had a stronghold over so many neighborhoods. They took over the prisons, they took over the streets. One neighborhood after another has had these BGF sets, these groups that would dominate the drug sales and violent crime of those neighborhoods. And, city and state prosecutors, federal prosecutors for years have been fighting back.
In 2013, the Baltimore City State's attorney indicted nearly 50 BGF members and associates for their alleged role in trafficking drugs, using weapons, and committing acts of violence in a Baltimore neighborhood. That same year, 13 correctional officers were among 25 BGF members indicted in the takedown of an operation that was occurring inside prison walls.
And now it's being subsidized by the mayor's office. Thank you, Monty.
Officials then detailing BGF members bribed correctional officers to smuggle drugs, cell phones, and other contraband in and out of the Baltimore City Detention Center, and even had long-term sexual relationships with several correctional officers and impregnated them. Fast forward to now, a decade later, BGF still making headlines.
You got to be relentless, and if you take your foot off the pedal, these gangs, which are so well organized, and were here before we started, and I fear we'll be here, even after we continue our work, they're going to come back.
Now, this isn't the first time BGF specifically has been linked to Safe Streets. You may recall back in 2018, a former worker admitted to storing guns and drugs. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, FBI raids are nothing new for Baltimore City. Many of them have ended in criminal charges. In 2019, the FBI, along with the IRS, raided multiple locations associated with former Mayor Catherine Pugh, including her home. She was sentenced to prison on fraud charges related to her Healthy Holly book scandal.
Oh, it was Pugh
in
that did
2021,
Healthy
Fox 45 obtained videos of FBI agents arriving at City Hall, where they served City Council President Nick Mosby. His wife, former City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, would eventually be indicted on 4 federal charges as a result of that investigation. Her trial starts on Tuesday. And last year, the FBI raided city school headquarters, part of an investigation involving payroll irregularities. Last month, federal agents arrested Dunbar football coach Lawrence Smith for alleged overtime fraud.
This is what we know right now. The FBI.
This is what I've been trying to piece together in some of the videos I did early on that I might redo with my new equipment. That this stuff goes to the top. That working for the fire department was ugly. There was some ugliness going on there. And they had a recent dismissal, which is shaded in all kinds of covering up. And a lot of the people who retire, I knew one chief who retired who probably could have been let go decades earlier. Just disgusting behavior on everybody's part. And nearly every mayor has some sort of legal, or now it's Marilyn Mosby. Marilyn Mosby, who was the prosecutor, and now her trial's starting now too. They're starting to pick the jury for her trial. Unbelievable.
FBI raided the Bel Air Edison Safe Streets location this morning, along with the homes of Safe Streets employees. Now, the FBI won't say what the investigation is about, but sources say federal agents are looking at possible connections with the Black Guerrilla family gang. There are questions about how the Safe Streets program works,
those are yours,
including how employees are hired and tracked and how it spends taxpayer dollars. That raises red flags for some experts who say the program needs to be more transparent.
Public information, such as what we're talking about, is public under Maryland law. And when you redact these things, it is arguably a violation of the law on its face in the state of Maryland. So they need to have
Okay, that's because we made it a government program. Originally, this was developed by an epidemiologist. That's a doctor who studies disease, studying violence as a disease. So we've made it political just because Mayor Scott, I guess, wanted it to have his own little reign over it. I don't know.
Medical transparency, forensic audits. We need to be able to follow the money, and quite frankly, the elites, those large organizations like LifeBridge, which runs that center that was raided today, or Catholic Charities that run other centers on the Safe Streets program. Those elite organizations, why are they taking taxpayer money? Look, Catholic Charities got $143 million of gross revenue in the latest year available. The CEO of LifeBridge Health made $2.3 million, and 5 executives made over $750,000 in the latest year available. Why do they need taxpayer help? They should lighten the load on the local taxpayer. They should pitch in on their noble charitable mission.
Thank you.
You can weigh in on our question of the day. Should safe streets be immediately shut down? So far, 97% of those who voted say yes. You can vote at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Well, Fox 45 News has been investigating the Safe Streets program for years, demanding answers about how the program spends taxpayer dollars and how it keeps track of the former criminals it employs.
We'll continue our relentless demand for answers, our commitment.
Okay, so like I said, Fox News, they obviously have their very Fox News slant. But I do appreciate how they have packaged all of this in one kind of small box for us. Thank you very much. And I don't mean to be critical, but of too much of it. But you do kind of clickbait with the transparency word. I'm no expert. I'm not a law expert. I'm not. But having worked in the city, I do understand some kind of cloaking of some things. But yes, if money's going into it, they should be able to process where these statistics are coming from. And if you correlate, not causation, but correlate their claims with reducing crime and the amount of violent crime that's increasing in the city and all of these things, you know, we haven't even gotten to the question. How about the question? How about this question? Why don't we let it rest here? Does Safe Streets distinguish in their statistics youth and adult crime? Because the youth crime in the city has skyrocketed, absolutely skyrocketed. And the fact that they don't hold those minors accountable to the level that they're committing the crimes is incredible to me as well. So I'm wondering how, just a lot of things. I'm wondering a lot of things, but how do these statistics, is it just adults that they intervene with? How are you able to prove that you're making any progress with all of the crime that is still going on in Baltimore? It is absolutely insane. So please chime in. I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm in law enforcement. I'm not an expert in Safe Street. I'm not an expert in a lot of things here. I'm just voicing my opinion from what I see and what I've seen. So comment, like, subscribe, share, whatever it is. We'll take a look at some other things as well that's not Fox related, if I can dig it up and collect it. Again, I didn't want to really even do this today because I sound so terrible. I'm sorry for the coughing. Tried to pause as much as possible. And everybody out there, be kind, be safe, be healthy, and have a great, I guess, weekend. We're coming up on the weekend again.